So since October 6th, Occupy Houston, in coordination with the city of Houston, has been the model for what a safe, respectful, and effective Occupy movement can look like. We have been totally compliant with everything that has been requested of us by the city, HPD, and Parks and Recreations, as well as the downtown event coordinators that we stepped aside peacefully and respectfully to allow their events to continue. On that note, we respect HPD and harbor no ill will or animosity toward them. Throughout this process, their job has been to enforce the policy. That's what they do every day, and for the most part, they do an excellent job. The reason I'm here today, standing in front of you, is that the policy that they're enforcing is unjust. The civility ordinance that we have been under the yoke of for the past month has endangered the safety and health of the Occupy participants. We have been unable to take adequate measures to erect simple shelters for our medical supplies, for our food, for our electronic equipment that allow this thing to happen. That being said, this situation impedes our ability to conduct our First Amendment right to peaceably assemble. We have repeatedly attempted through the traditional official channels to address this issue with the city, and they have refused to even open a discussion with us about it. The actions that were taken last night were by individuals who are passionate about their country, excited about this movement, but frustrated because on a day when we have tornadoes ripping through the city, we are unable to put a plastic tarp over our bedding, over our Band-Aids, over our granola bars to protect ourselves and make our occupation sustainable and effective. This is a serious problem that we need to see action happen on now, immediately. There were some elections that happened last night, and I would think that they would take their job seriously in protecting and serving the citizens of this great city. With that, I will take some questions before I hand over the microphones and the floor to my associate Mary here, who will speak on the details of last night's occurrence. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Is this a drastic transition from the relationship that you're used to from the police department in the city of Houston?
I would say no. That being said, we had folks last night who took the personal initiative to make a stand against what they view as an unjust policy that has unreasonably endangered our safety and health. We may see more actions like this going forward. We haven't discussed that. Everything is happening very quickly right now. It is my hope that this draws attention to the issues that we've been dealing with, which are mosquitoes, inclement weather, cold, rain, wind. All of these things are very dangerous to, again, as I said, our safety and health. And hopefully going forward, this will highlight and bring a lot more attention to this issue and get at least a discussion started on it, because we have not even been able to achieve that as of yet.
Where are the people that were arrested last night?
The folks that were arrested last night, there were half a dozen of them. They are currently at the municipal jail located on Lubbock Street. There will be arraigned today, as I understand.
They've split them up.
Oh.
Of 7 total, they've separated them through different courts. Sean Crump is located at Reisner. Amanda Kaiser is at Macawa. Rico Herrera is in Lubbock, and we're currently awaiting the status of the last 4 that were arrested. Chris Moratis, Eric Head, Matthew S., and Remington A.
Okay. Any further questions for me?
Does Occupy Houston currently have a legal body present?
Yes.
Yes, we have an extensive legal team that, in fact, just started a chapter of the National Lawyers Guild here in Houston, of which our legal team are members, founding members.
Did an attorney show up? On the note of our lawyers, one lawyer was present with us during all of the arrests. Burke, him and his wife were detained for jaywalking across the crosswalk where a police squad car had been parked. So they were unable to get across the crosswalk because there was a squad car parked there. At that point, then the police arrested them, cuffed them, put them in the back of squad cars, took them around, and then dropped them off at the Hobby Center shortly later, after. They weren't arrested, they were ticketed, but we assumed that they were arrested by the way that things were handled.
Can you walk us through what happened, what led up to the arrest?
Okay, early on, I think I arrived right at the beginning. Sean Crump, a two-time Iraqi war veteran and a homeless man that's been with our occupation pretty much from the start. He runs our green team. He was down here. He had tarps covering our equipment, solar panels, pretty much where we've been getting our electricity from was in this tarp, this tent. And they came in, they warned us, said we had to take it down. He stood his ground. They came, and then about 3 more times, I think it was 4 times total, that they had requested him to remove his tent. When he denied, more cops, as this was going along, started to show up. We ended up at the end where 27 police officers, 19 squad cars, and a paddy wagon. They lined up in, I believe, 4 or 5 rows and marched down the stairways right here to where his tent was set up. They pulled them out, ripped the tarp up, took the trash cans, everything that we had replaced. 3 tarps. We had replaced all of our valuable equipment. They had let us know that they would confiscate everything that was under the tent or tarp, so we took it all away, replaced it with trash cans, tables, chairs, things that we could afford to lose. They came in, they took it all, took the trash cans and everything. At that point, everyone else was kind of getting a little hectic. The cops had retreated across the way, and they had detained 4 others. At one point, they did end up arresting Remington for simply requesting a badge number and name, which is our constitutional right. We ended up with a few badge numbers and names of the cops that were willing to give them to us. Unfortunately, the ones that were not necessarily treating us the way that we should have been treated were the ones that refused badge numbers and names, and we have video of all of that. We actually never got any of their information, and they did drive off without ever coming back to us. When we reached the other side, after they had arrested everyone, they hauled the paddy wagon away, shouting, screaming, yelling, hit across the sidewalk. Remington politely requested, "Sir, may I please have your name and badge number?" The cop then screamed in his face that he needed to back up. He took a step back, asked once more, "May I please have your badge number?" Cuffed him, took him. And we found out shortly thereafter that he's been arrested, and we're waiting to find out. He hasn't been booked yet. That was about it. At that point, they took away our 4 detainees, the 3 jaywalkers, and Remington, who had asked for badge numbers and names, and they left. Not a single cop left here with the rest of us. They all went and vacated, and that was pretty much the end. And we've been working to find everyone since then. Do you have any questions?
So why that specific tarp and not these? What's the difference?
No idea.
So these
They singled this one out down here. I mean, I guess it was maybe covering a larger space. I really don't think so. I would have not have separated from the other tarps, but this one in particular, more than likely because there were people under it. It was raining. Shelter.
What has HPD told you about these tarps or tents?
These tarps, they actually came in yesterday for this particular tarp, and a few of them had let Sean know how to set it up appropriately and which would be the best way.
And he did.
And he did, and he changed. The tarp was initially set up in a different way. When they came down and said, "Hey, you should do it like this will be better. You know, we can live with this won't go as a tent," the HPD.
So HPD came down and recommended how you set it up?
How we set up this tent, and then the next day, 27 officers took it down. They didn't say any regulations. They just came in.
No poles, no stakes, which is obviously the definition of a tent. They just, I mean, he had cooperatively worked with them and restructured his tent, the so-called tent, to the way that the officers had said to do it. And then they came back, and he just stood firm on his decision. I mean, it was unjust, and like she mentioned, like Dustin mentioned, we need it for you know, the weather, for mosquitoes, for, you know, we're out here, we're peacefully protesting. Just
we're living here.
You know, we're practically living here.
We are.
So, you know, and the thing that got to me was Sheila Jackson Lee was here during our General Assembly, you know, giving us her words of support and a couple of words of advice. And there was maybe about 3 or 4 officers over there talking. I don't know what they were saying, but what I don't understand is why they didn't come here when Sheila was here. They waited until maybe not even 5 minutes after she left. Then they all came down here and started messing with Seamus.
I'm Daphne Silverman. I'm a lawyer with the National Lawyers Guild, and we've been providing support to Occupy Houston in the form of advice, reviewing the statutes, and letting them know when and if their conduct would violate a statute, and giving them advice on whether or not a permit might be appropriate or injunctive relief might be appropriate. And in that capacity, we have formed a Houston chapter, and we have a number of lawyers who have joined and who are agreeing to assist in any mass arrests like what happened last night. There are about 10 members of the 10 lawyers that are helping, and right now, Randall Callanan, we couldn't figure out anything online because the online system was down, so Mr. Callanan just went right down to the courthouse and was able to discover that the young lady who was arrested had already been arraigned at 9 this morning, and the remainder of the people were to be arraigned right now at 10 o'clock. And so Randall is entering an appearance for them, and we will be assigning lawyers for each one of them from the National Lawyers Guild here. And they're going to probably, although it is their decision, of course, they're going to probably be requesting a probable cause hearing and then entering a plea of not guilty. We want them to be able to have a hearing so that we can talk to the court right up front now about the reasons that they stood the way they did. There are the folks who decided that they needed to sit under the tent at that point have sort of developed a level of frustration with the city, that the city is willing to say, yes, we understand you have a First Amendment right to protest, that you're willing to be here and you're welcome to sit in the park, but we don't want you to have any shelter. I think that's really because they're hoping that eventually they'll go away quickly when it gets cold. But the position that the Guild has taken nationwide and that we're going to take for these folks here is that in order to exercise their First Amendment rights in the way that they've chosen to do this, they must have shelter. It is going to get cold here. It's not as cold as it is in some of the other areas where this has been a battle already, but it's going to get cold, and we are eventually going to have more rain, God willing, and they're going to need shelter in order to be able to continue to assert their First Amendment rights and represent the 99% that they're attempting to represent. And so if we have a probable cause hearing, if the courts will give us that, then we'll be able to address those issues now and hopefully get a ruling from the municipal judges on whether or not they can have tents. In addition to the people that were arrested who went under the tents, some people were arrested who were merely observing. Now, this is certainly an aspect of a First Amendment right, that we have the right to observe law enforcement in action. They do not have the right to tell us that you cannot observe us, that you must step where you cannot see us in any way. And those folks that were arrested for that will be defending their case in a similar fashion, hopefully with a probable cause hearing, but saying they had a right to be there to see what the police were doing. We also, unfortunately, had a lawyer arrested. National Lawyer Guild member Burke Moore was arrested for merely jaywalking. I really believe the motivation behind that was that he had been down here representing them and negotiating politely and respectfully and professionally with law enforcement throughout the process. And so when he went to leave the scene, unsuccessful at his negotiations, he attempted to cross the street. In the crosswalk, there was a vehicle in the crosswalk, and he had to go around that vehicle. And his wife was with him. His wife is not a lawyer. She was just here in support, and she was arrested also for jaywalking. They did release them with a citation shortly thereafterwards, but they were also arrested, and of course will be defending and are very disappointed in this action. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Are you in contact with any specific city official or city office that's negotiating this with you or listening to your concern that you feel like could take action?
Actually, with the position that we've taken as the National Lawyers Guild is that here in Houston is that we're providing them answers to their questions, but allowing the folks here to do their negotiating. And so they've really done a pretty good job. And initially, up until the issue about tents, the city had been very supportive, and I had been pleased to announce to my fellow guild lawyers across the country that rather than being aggressive with our folks, the city has allowed them to stay. And so at the very beginning, they walked into the Parks Department, and I don't remember who they spoke to, but they walked into the Parks Department and said, look, we want to stay here. And after some discussions, very professional discussions among all the parties, they said, okay, you can stay as long as you want, but we just don't want you to camp. So don't set up fires, which of course nobody wants to have any fires in Houston right now. Don't set up tents, don't camp, but you can stay as long as you want. We're happy to have you exercising your First Amendment rights. That there were some subsequent presentations to the City Council as a whole by members of Occupy Houston with advice from us on what might be appropriate and good things to say, where they attempted to get permission to actually have the tents. And there were some issues with power. They attempted to do that with City Council as a whole and failed. The City Council would not approve them having tents. Other questions? Nope.